Hi, I'm your host, Mr. U. Please enjoy this brief perspective specifically for your ears today. A few minutes of your time just might change your mind. We're keeping it all the way short. The GOAT of professional wrestling. Now, I told you guys I was going to start talking about some things that I actually enjoyed that I never discussed on the show before. This is one of those. Every once in a while, and it's pretty often, on social media especially, there's arguments about who's the GOAT. Who's the GOAT of professional wrestling? Who's the GOAT of the NBA? LeBron or Michael Jordan? Who's the GOAT in baseball? Who's the GOAT in hockey? Who's the GOAT in tennis and golf? It just goes on and on. It's a constant conversation, a lot of battling and arguing, and it gets messy sometimes. But when it comes to professional wrestling, it's kind of something that's close to my heart because it is a big part of my history. I actually been watching the sport aspect of it since the early 70s. As a matter of fact, I would even contend that while I was in my mother's womb, I was hearing the sounds of professional wrestling. Bodies being hit with chairs, body slams, and I heard all of those sounds, crowd roaring, and my grandmother clapping and jumping up and down. That's part of my childhood. It's part of my history. As I went on in years, I began to see the sport evolve from more sport also into sports and entertainment, becoming more entertaining than it is sport, I guess you'd say. There's a lot of ugliness at the bottom of that. I mean, people who are being stalked for autographs so they can be sold online, people whose houses are being broken into, anything that has to do with fame and fortune. People always experience this kind of stuff, unfortunately, but the people who are in the world of professional wrestling are not any different. They experience some of the same things. So there's definitely a stigma that's attached to the world of professional wrestling. But I want to talk about the GOAT, which is an acronym for the greatest of all time. Who's the greatest professional wrestler of all time and why? Love for you to make your case. If you got 3 points, make that case. Hit us up on our social media platform. We'd love to hear what you think. This is just like any other sports question, I guess. It's guaranteed to get people talking. It's guaranteed to be polarizing as well. Doesn't matter how many years pass. Any discussion of who is the GOAT in the NBA turns into an epic knockdown dragout. This sports/entertainment entity started back in the Civil War, if you can believe that, and has emerged into something much different nowadays, much more entertaining. Back in the 1800s, they were doing what's called shoot fighting, but it evolved into more of a choreographed, fixed fight to entertain people watching and not bore them. A lot of times, the old Greco-Roman style of wrestling was boring, and it went on for a long period of time, no excitement value whatsoever. The other way was much more entertaining. That's why we have more of this than the Greco-Roman shoot fighting style of wrestling today. This is where the idea of professional wrestling being fake actually came from, because it began to be more choreographed and fixed with fixed results. But my only question is this: when it comes to somebody who may be a proponent of the idea that wrestling is fake, here's a question for you. Have you ever been hit in the back with a fold-up chair? Has that ever happened? Have you ever had a 350-pound person fall down on your sternum from 3 to 5 feet in the air? Have you ever been picked up and dropped on your head? I'm just asking. Has any of those things happened? Did the feeling feel fake to you, or just a thought out there? I want to just kind of put it out there. I've been watching this since the early 70s. I don't consider myself an expert, but I definitely consider myself a purist. I've seen just about everything, quite literally. Since that time, there were 2 different camps in the wrestling community. One was the classic mat wrestler who would trade holds, use their strength and smarts to overpower or outmaneuver their opponent and get a pin. The other camp has a more modern view. They love the acrobatics, the high-flying skill set, the big personalities, the big talkers, the loud, boisterous outfits. People who can cut a promo and tell you what's going to happen in the ring before it happens. These 2 camps have long been at odds with each other. And that always shows up when this question is asked. Who is the GOAT? the greatest of all time in professional wrestling? I'd love to hear what you guys think. Who is the GOAT in professional wrestling? This is one episode where I won't share my opinion, maybe on social media post-episode. But to answer the GOAT question, you have to figure out how to determine that. In this case, you can say the GOAT, or the greatest of all time, is the one who won the most matches. Or the GOAT is the wrestler that had the longest championship reign, maybe. Or maybe the GOAT is the wrestler that was the most popular to you. Some would hesitate to use popularity as a reasoning for the greatest of all time criteria. But it's happening very often. But what's your criteria? Although I lived long enough to see the WWF and the territories like World Class, PWF, AWA, and the NWA, I've seen legends like Dusty Rhodes and Bruno Sammartino and Vern Gagne wrestle. The GOAT to me encompasses everything. So before you share your answers, I want to give you some food for thought before you make your decision. For me, the GOAT has to be entertaining, not flamboyant and able to make fans cheer or boo, but able to keep my attention. They have to have personality. The next criteria for me, they need to have an extensive resume and title reigns. They have to have logged in hours and years in this business. The GOAT would need to have won multiple championships. Next, the GOAT needs to have an extensive wrestling repertoire. Not one move set, not one move. That's not going to do it for me. They need to have extensive wrestling repertoire. They have to understand holds and counter holds. Next, the GOAT has to have been a heel or a face, which means they have to know both sides of the wrestling psychology of a good guy and bad guy. They have to understand the dynamics of both. And lastly, the GOAT needs to be skilled at wrestling. Not just mic work, but actual mat wrestling. Now, no matter what you think about these criteria, and you probably have some of your own, I'd love to hear them for you guys, there will always be a difference of opinion about who's the GOAT. Some say it's the 16-time champion John Cena. Others have said it's the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Woo! Names like The Undertaker, Andre the Giant, The Rock, Bret the Hitman Hart, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. What's your criteria? Who's your GOAT of professional wrestling? What criteria make them the GOAT in your mind? I want to hear your cases. Make your cases on our social media platform, especially on our Twitter page. Love to hear your thoughts on what makes the GOAT of professional wrestling in your opinion. Who's the greatest of all time? Share your thoughts on our social media platforms, and we'll probably highlight it on the Twitter machine and on a future episode as well. Love to hear your thoughts. Who's your GOAT of professional wrestling? We're keeping it all the way short. Coach out.